The next step is registering for our blueprint with our operator account, which is Alice's account. The keys for Alice's account are stored in test key store. So as it says in step 1, we'll open a new terminal to keep our testnet running, and then we'll navigate back to the directory of our blueprint. In this directory is where we're going to be running our blueprint register command. First, let's take a look at the help page. Like many of the other commands that we'll be running, we're able to specify a URL and a key store. The default values for both are important to note here. For the WebSocket URL, it defaults to the local IP address at port 9944. And if we go back to our deployment output, we see that our current Tangle node is running at that address and that port. So for this example, we don't actually have to specify a WebSocket URL. The key store, on the other hand, defaults to just key store. If you remember from before, we have two key stores, the test key store and the deploy key store. For this, we'll be using the test key store since it holds Alice's keys, meaning that we do have to specify that. Lastly is the blueprint ID, which we'll take a look at in a second. In our example, we're acting as both the deployer, or the owner of the blueprint, and the operator, the one that will be running the blueprint. But this isn't realistic. From our current perspective, we can just look at the deployment output to find the blueprint ID. But this isn't the case in a real-world example. So how do we get the blueprint ID? This is where cargo tangle blueprint list blueprints comes into play. Here, all it takes is a WebSocket URL. Similar to the register command, the default is the address that we're using, so we don't have to specify that. So let's run the command. As we can see here, it found one blueprint deployed to the Tangle network. It outputs all of the information that we might need regarding the blueprint. The most important thing here is the blueprint ID. We'll also see the operator ID of the owner, which is Bob. Here, we see a list of jobs. Our blueprint only has one job, so it only shows job 0. You can see the name of the job, the parameters, and the result. Now that we know the blueprint ID, we can go back to the register. We now have all of the information that we need to register to our blueprint. The WebSocket URL is the correct default, the blueprint ID is 0, and the key store is test key store. So let's do that. And when we run it, we successfully register to the blueprint. You'll notice that it lists the operator ID of the account that we're registering with. This matches the ID of Alice's account here, so we know that we did it correctly.